Hospitals are a strange place. On one hand, people are being saved from life-threatening diseases, and on the other, death is quite literally around every corner. With so many people experiencing their last moments in this realm in a hospital, it's no surprise that there are some strange and creepy things said as they take their last breath. Welcome back, most amazing crew. I'm your host Kennedy, and today we're counting down the top 10 dark last words heard by nurses. Buckle up. Starting us off at number 10 is cursed like a sailor. One nurse who works in the ICU took to Reddit under the name CABC, posting the weirdest thing a patient ever said to them. They start off by saying, quote, "I had a gentleman who was DNR on comfort care. He was demented and was cursing like a sailor. He seemed to have moments of clarity and when asked to see his brothers, who were both dead." Now, that all by itself, not creepy whatsoever. I mean, nurses are definitely used to an array of colorful language, considering how much of their days are spent with people in immense pain. But after a particularly worrisome heart rhythm, his rate started speeding up exponentially, and she began to think that this might be the end. At that moment, Reddit user says, quote, "The patient looked at me in the eyes and said, 'What's your name?' To which I replied, 'My name.' He asked, 'What do you do here?' 'I'm a nurse,' I replied. The dying man was quiet for some time, then out of nowhere he just said, 'F you,' and died in silence 20 minutes later. I mean, what was the reason? Coming in at number 9 is paint the house. Maybe it's just me, but I think the biggest question people have about dying is, will they get to see those who have already died wherever it is they are going? It's the whole what really happens to us when we die that likely plagues most of us. So maybe this isn't the darkest on the list, but it's still a bit odd nonetheless. In a post made by a now deleted Reddit account, the nurse explained one of the strangest and simultaneously comforting things they've ever heard. The post said they overheard a conversation between a patient and their grandchild. The grandfather was fading fast, but he turned to his granddaughter and said, quote, Dar, I can't hang around. Your grandma needs me to paint the house." The granddaughter was just about to remind him that her grandma had been dead for several years and there was no house to paint. Then he died right there and then in front of her. The Reddit user claims that while a bit strange, she likes to think that he really was living in his afterlife with his wife painting their house. Next up at number 8, he knew. This one comes from Reddit user Paper Rainbow, and they start off by saying that they came into work for an early shift and were handed over to a patient who had been experiencing high levels of anxiety, including a panic attack the previous evening. Reddit friend continues on saying that all morning the patient had still been quite anxious, but was showing nothing that was concerning and that tests were still coming back fine. So they were merely there to sit with him and make sure he felt okay. But then things started getting weird. The patient starts getting worse, breathing, lying in fetal, and looking like they're on the brink of another panic attack. So the Reddit user tries to reassure them, saying doctors will be here in 10 minutes and to please lie on his back so that they can better monitor his breathing. He refuses, saying, quote, "I won't make it until they get here and I won't face the other way." Still, the patient continued to be really agitated, so this time the nurse suggested to move for comfort. That's when he said, quote, "I won't make it until the doctors get here. If I turn to face the other way, I'll be gone." The patient repeated this phrase over and over and over. Then sure enough, as soon as the doctors walked in, he turned to the other side and died. I mean, that can't have just been a coincidence. Coming in at number 7, I understand. In a now deleted Reddit account, one nurse posted saying that although they had heard many strange or concerning last words from a patient, that this one was the creepiest. They started off by explaining that the man was obviously on his deathbed and that they knew he didn't have much time left, as he was experiencing renal failure. Apparently the patient has been pretty quiet for some time, but then all of a sudden his eyes got wide and he loudly yelled, "I see a bright light. Horses. No eyes. No, no, no." He then fell asleep for a bit, and Reddit user goes on to say that he woke up, looked up, and with his last breath he said, quote, "I understand." And he died right at that moment. The user finished off by explaining that, quote, "We know in the medical field that these situations are provoked by a cascade of neurotransmitters in disarray due to tissue and organ failure, but I sometimes have my doubts, and perhaps we are seeing more than we are led to believe." Coming in at number 6 is the Grim Reaper. Hallucinations can apparently be a normal occurrence for patients nearing death due to the high amount of pain meds they're on, but that doesn't mean that what they say still can't haunt you to your core, mostly cause you never really know what the truth is. One Reddit user named Koyena posted about a patient they had had one night that said, quote, "The devil has been in my room all night, but don't worry, God is with you." Then that night, after a horrible and brutal seizure, the man died with his eyes wide open and a creepy grimace plastered across his face. They explained that prior to the seizure, the man had been screaming at the devil in their room and kept shouting over and over, "Get out of here, the building's gonna blow." Now, thank God, nothing actually ever happened to the building, but still, the last thing this person ever said was that they were being haunted by the devil, and then they died with a haunting expression on their face. So definitely unsettling. Coming in at number 5, DNR. Reddit user Kali Asari posted a few years back about one DNR patient they had had that really affected them for a long time after they died. So first off, DNR, if you don't know, stands for Do Not Resuscitate, which means that the patient has opted out of any and all life-saving treatments. Reddit friend starts off by saying, quote, "The patient was on a high dose of morphine and hallucinating. She would alternate between grasping for things not there and trying to climb out of bed. She was too unsteady to walk, so my job was to sit in the room and make sure she was safe. The patient apparently continued trying to get up, so the nurse simply asked, 'What do you need? I'd be happy to get it for you.' To which the woman grabbed her arm, pulled her in close, and said very angrily, quote, 'Kill me.' Safe to say the nurse was expecting her to ask for some water or something. Obviously the nurse did not kill her, but she did die soon after, and that was the last thing she said before she died. Pretty creepy, if you ask me. Coming in at number 4, a confession. Okay, so this one isn't from a nurse, it's actually from a surgeon, but it's really creepy, so I'm still counting it. There is a lot you might expect someone to confess on their deathbed. Cheating scandals, admitting that they hated something or someone, that they were a drug addict, or maybe there was a secret undercover agent. But this story posted to Reddit by the user Really Unbelievable a few years ago honestly sounds like the start of every plot of a true crime doc I've ever heard of. They say, quote, "Not sure if this is creepy, but a man on his deathbed kept repeating, 'The body is in the woods next to the oak tree,' over and over and over again until he passed." Yes, that is creepy, I would say. Was this man confessing to killing someone and hiding the evidence? Apparently police got involved and they ended up searching the area the patient had mentioned but never recovered any evidence of a body. True, it could have been nothing, but that doesn't really seem like something you'd say without any grounds to back it up. Coming in at number 3, Haemorrhaging. This next story was by a now deleted Reddit account and might be one of the goriest stories I've ever heard. The patient was hooked up to a trach, which is a tube connected to your neck that helps you breathe when the patient is not able to do so themselves. A Reddit user says, quote, "I walked up to her and saw bright red blood just started shooting up the vent circuit and immediately obstructed it. This wasn't the first time they'd seen something like this, so they turned to the surgeon and explained that the patient was hemorrhaging, to which the doc apparently replied that it was just a little bit of blood, assuming the nurse was referring to the access site in her groin. The nurse knew that there was no time to waste, so they popped off the vent, but it was worse than they had even imagined. Blood started pouring out of her trach, mouth and nose at an exceeding rate until a pool about 6 feet in diameter circled them on the floor and they were covered from chest down. They said after a few minutes the patient used her last bit of strength to look into Reddit users' eyes and just say, quote, "Let me die." Coming in at number 2, fire. As I've mentioned, many nurses or medical staff chalk up strange late-stage behavior to pain meds or a way to cope. But this one story by L_3 had her questioning her own sanity for a few days after. Quote, "I had an old lady flag me down in the hallway a few days before she passed, and with her emaciated face and bulging eyes, she said, 'You know where I'm going.' The nurse asked her what she meant by that, to which she replied, 'You know where I'm going when I die, and it ain't up.' I mean, while it was definitely obscure, our Reddit friend wasn't too freaked out by this point. She simply asked the patient if she would like to see the hospital priest on staff, to which the patient shook her head no and said, "It's too late for that." Then, a few days later, the patient was in bed, eating her dinner, and started screaming. And so the nurse ran in to find her shouting, "Fire, fire, fire! There's fire everywhere." The patient died a few hours later, and the nurse couldn't sleep that night as she was so freaked out that she'd actually witnessed someone seeing the literal fires of hell. And last up in our #1 spot today is Saw the Devil. Posted by Reddit user LolaCSD 6 years ago, they start off by explaining that their patient was a 20-year-old who had previously been a gang member, then ended up diagnosed with terminal liver cancer. The patient was very angry at the universe, which the nurse felt sympathy for, considering how young he was when he was dying, but mentioned that he was an incredibly aggressive and angry young man, often spitting in her or his family's faces and calling just about everyone who spoke to him cruel names. His anger only got worse as his condition progressed, but still his family remained by his side. On his last day, the family called in the nurse to the room as he wasn't responding. His eyes were glossed over, his skin cold, and was barely breathing. His mother, in a last attempt to comfort him, whispered to go towards the light, to Jesus, to which the young man came to and shouted, "F your Jesus." Then the nurse said the next part haunted her for weeks. He then slowly turned his head to the left and got the horrific look on his face, as if he was looking at something we couldn't see. And horrified, like in a bad movie, his face contorted and he screamed with his last breath, eyes wide, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh no!" Then made a guttural noise and promptly fell back into the bed and died. I mean, if that doesn't sound like someone seeing hell, then I don't know what does. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video here. If you know of any other crazy stories that nurses have heard, make sure to leave them in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.